Have you ever been asked in an interview what is Jenkins and why do we use it in DevOps? It sounds simple, but how you answer can make or break your first impression. Now, Jenkins is one of the most popular tools in the world of continuous integration and continuous delivery, CI/CD. Think of it as the automation engine that takes repetitive tasks like building, testing, and deploying code and turns them into smooth, reliable pipelines. And instead of worrying about whether your code will work on different machines or not, if deployments will break, Jenkins helps team deliver software quickly, consistently, and with fewer errors. In this video, we have curated a set of Jenkins interview question and answers that cover both the fundamentals and advanced topics. From setting up jobs, handling agents, and managing plugins to designing robust pipelines, you will be ready for anything an interviewer throws at you. And by the end, you won't just know Jenkins, you will be confident enough to talk about it like a pro. So are you ready to prepare for your next big interview? Let's dive right in. But before we actually dive in, I have added a quiz question for you. The question is, Jenkins is mainly used for, your options are word processing, continuous integration and continuous delivery, gaming, or social networking. Let me know your answers in the comment section below. If you are really interested in becoming a DevOps expert, then the DevOps Engineer Master Program is the perfect place to start with. This is a 6-month live online program created in collaboration with IBM, Microsoft, AWS, and Google Cloud. This will help you master every stage of the DevOps lifecycle through hands-on labs, interactive classes, and real-world projects. You learn tools like Git, Jenkins, Docker, Kubernetes, Ansible, Terraform, Prometheus, and Grafana while working on capstone projects in insurance, banking, and healthcare. Along with industry-recognized certificates from IBM and Microsoft, you'll also get career support with job assist resume building and job spotlighting through IIM Jobs. With the global DevOps market growing rapidly and average salaries crossing around $138,000 in the US, this program is your gateway to exciting high career opportunity. So hurry up and enroll now, and you can find the course link below. So let's get started with the first question on our list. The question is, what is Jenkins and what is its primary? To answer this, you need to say that Jenkins is an open source automation server that simplifies the software development lifecycle by automating tasks like building, testing, and deploying code. Its primary role is enabling continuous integration, which is C, and continuous delivery, which is CD. Now, with the help of CI, developers integrate code frequently and Jenkins automatically verifies each change through builds and tests. And with the help of CD, Jenkins ensures that the software is always in a deployable state and it can even automate deployments. The purpose for this is it automates repetitive tasks, reduces human error, and ensures faster and more reliable software delivery. Now imagine a factory conveyor belt where raw materials, which is the code, come in, and finished product, which is the software, comes out. Jenkins is that conveyor belt that applies all the quality checks consistently. Let's say, for example, a Jenkins job monitors a GitHub repository. Every time a developer pushes code, Jenkins compiles the project using Maven, runs JUnit tests, and if successful, it deploys the build to a staging environment. So guys, this is how you answer to this question when the interviewer asks you. Make sure you also use some examples and also case study to make it more clear and explainable. Let's move on to a second question, which is explain the difference between Jenkins and Hudson. This is often most asked interview question. Now to answer this, you need to clearly define the difference between Jenkins and Hudson. First off, we'll define the difference between the origin of Hudson and Jenkins. So the point of difference in origin is Hudson original CI/CD tool is created at Sun Microsystem, which is later Oracle. Whereas in the case of Jenkins, it is forked from Hudson in 2011 due to community versus Oracle governance issue. Now this is the difference between the origin of Hudson and Jenkins. Now the second point of difference is the community support. Now in the case of Hudson, it is limited community after Oracle took control. Whereas in the case of Jenkins, it's a strong, active, global, open source community. Third point of difference is development and updates. Now, Hudson updates slowed down, fewer new features, whereas Jenkins, regular updates, active deployment, frequent improvements. Talking about plugins and ecosystem, then Hudson has smaller plugin ecosystem, that too with limited integration. Whereas in the case of Jenkins, it has got large plugin library, over 1800 plus, with wide ecosystem support. Now, this is a major point of difference to be noticed between Hudson and Jenkins. Make sure you clearly define this, the difference between plugin and ecosystem. The next point of difference is industry adoption. Now, Hudson has declined over time used today, whereas Jenkins is very popular industry standard CI/CD tool used worldwide. So this is how you answer when the interviewer asks about explaining the difference between Jenkins and Hudson. The third question on our list is, what is Jenkins Pipeline? This is also an often asked interview question. Now, to answer this, you need to say that a Jenkins pipeline is an automated sequence of steps that defines how code is built, tested, and deployed. Pipelines are written as code, typically inside a Jenkins, making them version controlled and easy to share. Now, they share consistency, repeatability, and visibility in the software delivery lifecycle. For example, you can think of a pizza shop where every pizza must go through the same steps. First is to make dough, add toppings, bake, pack, and then deliver. Jenkins pipelines make sure every piece of software goes through its own consistent kitchen process. Now you see how with the help of this example, it's very clear that how Jenkins pipeline work. So make sure in interview you can also give such type of examples so that the interviewer knows exactly that you're clearly defined with this question. Now let's come to our fourth question on the list, which is, how do you define a Jenkins pipe? Now to answer this, you need to say that you define a pipeline in a Jenkins file, which is stored in the project source code repository. Now this file contains instruction written in either declarative or scripted syntax describing each stage of the pipeline. So first of all, we've got declarative syntax, which is structured and easy to read. Second, we've got scripted syntax, which is more flexible, and it is also written in Groovy. Now, the Jenkins file is like a recipe card that tells Jenkins exactly what ingredients, which is the tools, to use and in what order, which are the stages. Now, let's look at an example of a Jenkins file. So, we have a code here, which is pipeline agent any. Stages, we have compile, sh c app.java, stegs, test, sh java org.junit, runner.junit core, and test. So, you can write this code and you can clearly define a Jenkins pipeline in this order. So, this is the order how we define a Jenkins pipeline in DevOps. So, these are the stages: the compile, running the test, and running the JUnit core. Now let's move on to our fifth question on our list, which is explain the difference between scripted and declarative Jenkins pipeline. Now, to answer this, let's look at the first aspect, which is the structure. Now, in the case of declarative pipeline, the structure is, it has a predefined opinionated structure, whereas in the case of scripted pipeline, it is fully written in Groovy, no strict structure. Next is ease of use. In the case of declarative pipeline, it is easier to write, read, and maintain for most of the users, whereas in the case of scripted pipeline, it requires more coding skills. It can be harder to read as well. Then we've got flexibility. Now, declarative pipeline, it has got limited flexibility and it is best useful for standard CI/CD tasks. Whereas in the case of scripted pipeline, it's very flexible and it supports loops, conditionals, etc. Let's look at an analogy. So in the case of declarative pipeline, it is just like following a cookbook recipe step by step. Whereas in the case of scripted pipeline, it is like freestyle cooking by a master chef. Now, do you see how with the help of this analogy, we can clearly define the difference between declarative pipeline and scripted pipeline. Make sure you answer in this way in your interview. Let's look at our sixth question, which is, what is a Jenkins agent, which is node, and how does it work? Now, to answer this, you need to say that in Jenkins, the main server, which is the controller, doesn't run builds itself. It delegates work to the agents, which are the nodes. Now, these agents are machines where the actual tasks like compiling or testing are run. Now, talking about how does it work? Well, the controller assigns job to the agent which executes job. You can think of a manager, which is the controller, who delegates tasks to employees, which are the agents. Then the manager organizes, but the employees do the real work for you. Let's say, for example, you might set up one agent on Linux and another one on Windows. Now, Jenkins can run the same job on both to check cross-platform compatibility. Let's look at our seventh question on our list, which is explain the purpose of Jenkins plugins. Now, we know that plugins are extensions that give Jenkins the ability to integrate with other tools and add new functionality. Let's say, for example, of plugins, we've got Git, which is the source control, Maven, build, Docker, containers, Slack, and it is used for notification. Now, Jenkins by itself is just a core system. Plugins make it flexible enough to work in any environment. You can think of Jenkins like a smartphone. Out of the box, it can make calls, basic automation. But when you install apps, which are the plugins, it can do almost anything from chatting to banking. So guys, this is how you explain the purpose of Jenkins plugin to the interviewers. Make sure you also list the plugins used here and explain the functionality for each. Let's move on to our eighth question on our list, which is how do you secure Jenkins? To answer this, you need to say that securing Jenkins is vital because it often stores sensitive credentials and manages deployments. The first one is authentication. Only authorized users can log in, which is LDAP and Active Directory. The second one is authorization, role-based access control to limit permissions. The third one is credential store. Secrets are stored securely and injected into jobs when needed. The fourth one is HTTPS. This ensures communication is encrypted. The next one, we've got regular updates. This keeps Jenkins and plugins up to date to prevent security holes. Our ninth question is explain Jenkins Job DSL. Now, to answer this, you need to say that Job DSL, which is the domain-specific language, lets you define jobs programmatically in Groovy scripts. Now, instead of creating them manually in the UI, we use it for consistency, automation, and version. Now, imagine you need to set up 50 similar jobs. Instead of filling 50 forms by hand, manual, you write one script and Jenkins generates them. Let's look at an example over here. So we've got this code here, job, my first job, which is the function. So here the SCM is git@github.com, example repo.git. Then we have triggers SCMH divided by 15. Then these are the steps, shell. Now you can also give this code example in the interviewer to make it more visible and clearer. Let's move on to our 10th question, which is what is the Jenkins file and how is it used? Now, the Jenkins file is a text file stored in your source repository that defines the pipeline stages. It brings pipelines as code, making the build process transparent, auditable, and version controlled. Anyone can open the Jenkins file to understand how code gets built, tested, and deployed. Let's say, for example, we've got this code here, pipeline agent, any stages build, steps, and this is the steps, sh mvn clean package, steps test, junit target /test to XML. So this is how you answer question when the interviewer asks about what is Jenkins file and how is it used. Now, it's not necessary to give code examples, but then if you do that, it would make it much more worth. Let's move on to our 11th question on our list, which is explain Jenkins build triggers and how they work. Now, to answer this, you need to say that in Jenkins, build triggers are mechanisms that tell Jenkins when to start a job automatically without manual intervention. Now, instead of developers hitting the build now button, triggers make sure job run at the right time. This keeps the CI/CD process smooth and responsive. Let's look at the type of triggers. So the first one is the SCM polling or webhooks. This trigger a build when code changes in GitHub or GitLab. The second one is schedule, which is the cron. Build jobs at fixed times like every night at 2 a.m. The third one on our list is manual. Developers can still trigger manually when needed. Then we've got remote trigger or API. External systems or scripts can call Jenkins to start builds. Think of a washing machine with multiple start options. You can press the start button manual, set a timer scheduled, or connect it to your smart home system that start it when energy is cheap, which is the webhook and API. Let's say we have an example here, configure a pipeline so that every time a developer pushes to the main branch in GitHub, a webhook notifies Jenkins, which automatically runs, build, and test the stages for you. The 12th question is, how do you automate deployments using Jenkins? Now, to answer this, you need to say that automating deployments with Jenkins means including a deployment stage in your pipeline that handles the process of moving applications to staging or the production stage. Now, instead of developers manually copying files or running deployment scripts, Jenkins does it consistently after builds and tests are succeeded. Here's how it's done. First is you need to add a deployment stage in the Jenkins file. Then you can use tools like Ansible, Docker, or Kubernetes for automation. Then you need to configure it so deployment happens only if all the tests pass. Now I'll give you an analogy. Imagine a publishing house where once a book is printed and proofread, it automatically goes to the bookstore without the author personally delivering each copy. Jenkins is the delivery truck, ensuring it reaches the production at the right time. Now here I've got an example Jenkins file snippet code. So here is the pipeline, agent any stages, stage deploy, steps, and these are the steps: Ansible, playbook, inventory, deploy, .yml file. The 13th question on our list is, what are Jenkins build artifacts and how are they used? To answer this, you need to say that build artifacts are the output files generated by a build job, things like jar files, war files, Docker images, or even test reports. Jenkins can store these artifacts so that they can be reused later for testing, deployments, or auditing. Why artifacts matter? Because they provide a snapshot of what was built, ensuring the exact same files can be redeployed or rolled back if needed. Now imagine baking cookies. The dough is your code, and once baked, the cookies are your build artifacts. Jenkins save the cookies so that you can serve them later without having to bake again. We have one more example here, the second one. The Maven build might produce a MyApp 1.0 jar. Jenkins can archive it and pass it to the deployment stage, ensuring the same jar that passed tests is that one being deployed. Our 14th question is, explain the concept of Jenkins pipeline stages. Now, pipeline stages break down the CI/CD workflow into logical sections, making it easy to understand and manage. Each stage represents a significant step in the process. These are the typical stages out here. The first one is build. This will compile the source code. Second one is test. It will run unit and integration test. The third one is deploy. You can push the build to an environment. Now, why do stages help? Because they provide visibility and control. If a pipeline fails, you instantly know whether the failure was during the build, testing, or the deployment. Think of applying for a passport. You can go through multiple stages: document verification, police verification, printing, and delivery. Each stage is critical, and failure at one step of the process. Jenkins pipelines work in the same way. Let's say, for example, we have this Jenkins file here. We have the stages, stage build, steps, sh maven, clean install, stage test, steps are mentioned over here. And again, we have stage deploy, and these are the steps. Now, let's move on to our 15th question, which is, how do you troubleshoot Jenkins build failures? Very important question to answer. To answer this, you need to say that troubleshooting in Jenkins means identifying why a build failed and fixing it. Failures can happen for many reasons: incorrect code, missing dependencies, environment issues, or configuration problem. Let's look at the steps to troubleshoot this. The first step is check console output. The build logs usually reveal errors. The second one is reproduce locally. Run the same command on your machine. The third step is verify environment. Ensure tools like Java, Maven, or Node.js are correctly installed. The fourth one is check dependencies. Missing libraries often cause failure. The fifth one is use plugins. The build failure analyzer plugin suggests likely causes. Troubleshooting a failed Jenkins job is just like fixing a that won't start. Check the dashboard logs, try starting it manually, local run, inspect fuel, oil environment, and if call a mechanic, which is your plugin. Let's say, for example, if with MVN command not found, the fix is to install Maven on the agent or configure the correct toolpath in Jenkins. The 16th question is, what are the key features of Jenkins? The answer to this is Jenkins is popular because of its flexibility and wide adoption in DevOps. It's free and open source. Anyone can use and extend it. The second one is pipeline as code. Build processes are defined in Jenkins file. Third one is distributed, runs job across multiple agents. Then is plugins. Thousands of integrations with tools like Git, Kubernetes, and Slack. Then we've got extensible. Developers can write custom plugins here. Next, we've got cross-platform. This runs on Windows, Mac, and even inside. Now, Jenkins is just like a Swiss Army knife in DevOps. It may look simple, but with the right attachment, which is the plugins, it can almost do everything. For example, a typical Jenkins pipeline might integrate GitHub for source control for builds, JUnit for testing, Docker for containerization, and Slack for notifications, all in one flow. So let's look to our 17th question on our list, which is how can you install Jenkins? Now, Jenkins is easy to install and runs on almost any system. The methods for doing is, the first method is the war file. Run with java -jar jenkins.war. The second step is installing system packages. Install using apt, Linux, Yum, or Homebrew in Mac. The third step is Windows installer. Use the MSI installer for this. Then we've got Docker. Pull the Jenkins image and run in a container. Kubernetes, use Helm charts for large-scale deployment. Make sure you use Helm charts for this for large-scale deployments. Now, installing Jenkins is just like installing an app. You can install it directly on your operating system, run it as a container for isolation, or deploy it to the cloud for scalability. Let's move on to our 18th question on our list, which is what is continuous integration and continuous delivery? Now, continuous integration CI is the practice of merging code frequently into a shared repository and automatically building and testing it. Continuous delivery CD extends CI by ensuring that software is always in a deployable state and can be released at any time. CI example, we have Jenkins, which detects a commit in a GitHub, builds the code and runs unit test for you. We have got CD example also. After passing test, Jenkins automatically deploys the build to a staging server. CI is like a quality control on an assembly line. It ensures each part fits correctly, and CD is like packaging and keeping the product ready to ship whenever the customer orders. Let's look at our 19th question on our list, which is what is the role of the workspace directory in Jenkins? Now, every Jenkins job runs its own workspace directory or the agent machine. This directory contains the checked out source code, build script, and temporary files. The purpose of this is it keeps the job isolated so they don't interfere with each other. You can think of a workspace as your personal desk. Each employee, which is a job, gets its own desk so the papers, which are the files, don't mix up with others. Let's say, for example, if you run a job called my app build, Jenkins create lib Jenkins workspace /my app build / where it checks out the code and builds it. The 20th question is, how do you manage credentials securely in Jenkins? Now, Jenkins provides credential store to manage sensitive information like password, SH keys, or API tokens. Instead of hard coding secrets in script, you save them in Jenkins and reference them by their ID. Why does this matter? Because it keeps credentials safe, avoids accidental exposure in logs, and allows rotation. It's like a safe in your house. You don't leave your jewelry lying around. You store it securely and only take it out when needed. We've got an example of Jenkins file here. with credential username, password, credential ID is equals to AWS creds. Then we have set the username variable as user, password variable as pass. And this is a code snippet here, SHAWS S3, access key, user, secret key, pass. The 21st question is, what is the master-slave architecture in Jenkins? Now, Jenkins traditionally worked in what we call the master-slave architecture, though today we often say controller-agent model. The master or the controller is responsible for scheduling jobs, managing configuration, and handling the user interface. The slaves or agents are machines that do the actual heavy lifting, which is the executing builds, running tests, and performing deployments. Why is it useful? Because this architecture allows Jenkins to distribute workloads across multiple machines, which speeds up builds and provides flexibility. So you can run jobs on different operating systems. Now imagine a project manager, the master who doesn't write the code but coordinates tasks. The developers, the agents, do the actual and testing. The manager assigns tasks, but the real work happens with the team. Example, you can configure Jenkins to have one agent on another one on Windows and run the same job on both the agents to ensure your app works in both environments. 22nd question is how you can trigger a Jenkins job externally. To answer this, you need to say that while jobs can be triggered automatically by the SCM, changes or schedule, Jenkins also allows external system to trigger job. This is useful when Jenkins needs to respond to events outside its control. The methods for this is the REST API. Now, Jenkins exposes an API to start the job. So you can see the API from here, post, HTTP, Jenkins, AT job, my job build, user, token. Then we've got webhook. External systems like GitHub send a signal to Jenkins whenever a commit occurs. Remote trigger tokens. Jenkins job can be configured with unique tokens for external triggering. You can think of a doorbell. Usually you open the door yourself, but others can ring the bell, which is the external trigger to signal you open the door. The 23rd question is, how does Jenkins support distributed builds? To answer this, Jenkins supports distributed builds through its controller agent setup. The controller manages and schedules job, but the actual work can be split across multiple agents. Now, this allows jobs to run in parallel and on different environments. Let's talk about the benefits for this. The first benefit is its faster execution becomes jobs run simultaneously. Flexibility in testing across multiple OSs and environments. Third one is efficient resource utilization. You can think of a bakery where one baker alone would take hours to bake 100 cakes. But if the work is divided among 10 bakers, the job finishes quickly. Jenkins does the same by distributing builds to many agents. 24th question is, what is Groovy and how is it used in Jenkins? To answer this, you need to say and first explain what is Groovy. Now, Groovy is a powerful dynamic programming language for the JVM, Java Virtual Machine. Now, in Jenkins, it is the foundation for scripted pipelines, Job DSL, and shared libraries. So, where is Groovy actually used? Well, it's used in scripted pipelines written entirely in Groovy. Then we've got Job DSL that uses Groovy syntax to create jobs programmatically. Then we've got shared libraries which stores reusable Groovy functions for pipelines. You can think of Groovy as the secret sauce inside Jenkins. The Jenkins file may look simple and declarative syntax, but behind the scenes, Groovy powers the scripting capabilities. Let's say, for example, we have got this Groovy scripted pipeline code from here, node stage build, shmvn clean install, stage test, shmvn test. The next question is, how can you implement parallel execution in Jenkins pipeline? To answer this, let's look at the answer to this question. Now, parallel execution lets Jenkins run multiple tasks at the same time within a pipeline, which is a lot of time for big projects. How to do it? In a declarative pipeline, use the parallel block. Now, instead of waiting for one test suite to finish before starting another, you can run them simultaneously. Now, imagine doing laundry. Instead of washing, drying, and ironing clothes one after the other, you do them all at once with multiple machines. That's parallel execution. For example, we've got this Jenkins file. We've got node, stages test, parallel, stage unit test. Again, the steps, SHMVN test, stage integration test, steps, SHMVN verify. Now let's look at a question which is, how do you schedule a Jenkins job? This is often asked in interview questions. Scheduling in Jenkins is done using syntax in the job configuration. This allows jobs to run periodically without manual intervention. We've got the cron format as min, hour, dom, month, down. This is the format, the cron format you need to follow. Then you can think of setting an alarm clock. You can set it for 6 a.m. every day or every 15 minutes as a reminder. Jenkins cron work in the same way for you. A nightly build can be scheduled to run at midnight to generate reports and test the full application for you. Let's look at your 27th question on our list, which is, what is the difference between freestyle and pipeline jobs in Jenkins? Now to answer this, let's look at the aspect and differences between them. The first aspect is configuration. In the case of freestyle jobs, it's configured through the Jenkins UI, whereas in the case of pipeline jobs, it's defined as a code in the Jenkins file. Talking about the setup complexity, freestyle jobs, it's simple to set up, quick for small projects. Pipeline jobs, it's more complex but powerful, requires coding knowledge. Then we've got flexibility. Freestyle jobs does not support parallel execution. Pipeline jobs, it supports parallel execution and advanced pipeline features. Maintainability, freestyle jobs are less maintainable and harder to scale, whereas pipeline jobs are easily maintainable, versioned, and scalable. Parallel execution, it does not support parallel execution at all, whereas pipeline jobs, it supports parallel execution and advanced pipeline features. Then we'll have a look at our 28th question on our list, which is, describe the use of environment variables in Jenkins. Now to answer this, you need to say that environment variables in Jenkins provide dynamic values that can be used within jobs or pipelines. They can represent job metadata or credentials. Types. Let's look at the types for this. So the types are, first we've got built-in. It's like build number, job name, workspace. Then we've got custom types. It is defined by users in the Jenkins file. The third one is credentials. Credentials are sensitive information injected securely. Imagine an office whiteboard where someone writes down today's date, meeting room, and the key task. Everyone in the office refers to that board instead of asking each time. Now, environment variables serve as that shared reference in Jenkins. Let's look at our 29th question, which is, how does Jenkins integrate with version control systems? To answer this, Jenkins integrates seamlessly with systems like GitLab, GitHub, Bitbucket, and even older ones like SVN. This integration is essential because Jenkins needs to fetch source data to build it. Let's talk about how it works. First, you need to install the Git plugin, then configure the repository URL, set up credentials if required, and Jenkins automatically checks out the code before building it for you. Think of Jenkins as the chef. The recipe, the source code, is stored in a pantry. Jenkins has to fetch the recipe before it can start cooking for you. The 30th question on the list is, what is the Blue Ocean in Jenkins? Now, Blue Ocean is a modern UI for Jenkins that makes pipeline more visual and user-friendly. Instead of scrolling through text-based logs, you can get a clean interface to see each stage of your pipeline and where it failed or succeeded. Why is it useful? Because it simplifies pipeline visualization, especially for non-technical users. The features for it are modern design, easy navigation, and graphical pipeline view. The traditional Jenkins UI is like looking at a train's engine logs to figure out where it stopped. Blue Ocean is like Google Maps. It shows you the journey visually with clear stages and progress markers. The 31st question on the list is, how do you create and use shared libraries in Jenkins Pipeline? Now, to answer this, you need to say that shared libraries in Jenkins allow you to reuse pipeline code across multiple projects. So instead of repeating the same logic in every Jenkins file, you can store common step in a shared library and simply import it. Here's how it works. First, you need to create a Git repository containing reusable pipeline code. In Jenkins, configure this repo as a global pipeline library. Then, reference the library in your Jenkins file with @library. Why it matters? Because it keeps pipelines dry, don't repeat yourself, improves maintainability, and standardizes CI/CD practices across the team. You can imagine a company cookbook where all the chefs, developers use the same recipe pipeline step instead of each one their own. This ensures consistency and quality. Let's look at a 32 question on a list, which is what is the difference between continuous delivery and continuous deployment? A very important and crucial question often asked in interviews. So let's look at your first aspect, automation level. Now, continuous delivery automates everything up to staging and requires manual approval for production deployment. Whereas continuous deployment is fully automated, no manual intervention required, code goes straight to production. The approval process is manual in the case of continuous delivery, manual approval required before deployment to production, whereas continuous deployment, no manual approval, automated deployment to production with each successful build. The deployment frequency in the case of continuous delivery, the deployments are scheduled or initiated manually after approval. Whereas continuous deployments happen automatically after every successful build. The risk level for continuous delivery, slightly higher risk due to manual approval step in production, whereas in the case of continuous deployment, potentially higher risk since everything is deployed automatically to production. So this is how you answer when the interviewer asks you about the difference between continuous delivery and continuous deployment. Let's look at our 33 question, which is how do you handle build environment differences in different environments, deployment, staging, production often requires different configurations. Now, Jenkins provides multiple ways to handle this gracefully. The methods used are different agents for different environments like Linux, Windows, etc. Then, authorize builds to pass environment-specific variable. Use Docker to ensure consistent environments. Store environment configuration in external files or tools like Ansible. You can think of tailoring clothes for different people. The design pipeline is the same, but the measurements, environment variables differ. Jenkins ensured the same pipeline logic can adapt to different sizes. 34th question is explain the Jenkins build queue. To answer this, we need to say that when jobs are triggered in Jenkins, they don't always run immediately. If all executors, workers, on agents are busy, the jobs wait in a build queue until resources are available. Because to manage workload and ensure jobs run fairly without overloading agents. Imagine a coffee shop with only 2. If 10 customers walk in at once, then the first 2 are served immediately, while the others wait in a queue until a is free. Jenkins operates the same way with builds. If 3 long-running jobs are running and a new job is triggered, it will stay in the build queue until one executor becomes available. The 35th question is, how do you roll back a Jenkins deployment? Now, rollbacks are essential when a deployment introduces bugs or failures. Jenkins doesn't roll back by itself, but you can script rollback strategies into pipelines. Common rollback strategies over here are redeploy the last known stable build artifact, use version Docker images and revert to an older tag, use Kubernetes or built-in rollback commands. Now, these are the most common rollback strategies you need to follow. Let's look at our 36th question now, which is what is the use of the post section in the declarative pipeline? The post section in Jenkins pipeline defines steps that run after a stage or pipeline finishes. Regardless of success or failure, it's commonly used for notifications, cleanup, or reporting. The types of post conditions are success, runs only on success. Second is failure, runs only on failure. Always, runs regardless of outcomes. You can think of finishing a workout session regardless of whether you hit your goal, success or not, failure. You always stretch, which is the cleanup, but maybe you only reward yourself with a smoothie if you succeed. The post section manages these conditions. Let's say, for example, you've got the code snippet here as post success echo build passed, failure echo build failed, and always as clean WS. The 37th question is, how do you upgrade Jenkins safely? Upgrading Jenkins requires careful steps to avoid breaking jobs or losing data. over here, our first step is the backup, the Jenkins home directory, the configuration plugins or the job definitions. Second one is update all the plugins first, ensuring compatibility. Then upgrade the Jenkins core to the latest LTS version. Restart Jenkins and test critical jobs. Think of renovating your house. First pack your valuables, backup, update furniture, plugins, then remodel Jenkins core and finally test if everything works as expected. 38th question. What are the matrix job in Jenkins? Matrix jobs lets you run same job across multiple configurations like different operating system, Java versions or browser environments. Why is it useful? Because it ensures your application works across multiple setups without manually configuring separate jobs. Now imagine testing a recipe. Instead of cooking it once, you try it with different ingredients, butter versus oil, sugar versus honey, to ensure it always tastes good. Matrix job do the same with software builds. Example, a matrix job can test a Java app with JDK and JDK 11 and JDK 17 on Linux and Windows simultaneously. 39th question. How do you monitor Jenkins performance? Monitoring Jenkins is essential to ensure it remains stable and responsive. Let's look at the ways to monitor. The first is use the Monitory plugin or Prometheus plugin to export the metric. Then visualize performance in Grafana dashboards. Track CPU, memory usage, and queue size. Install the Prometheus plugin in Jenkins, create metrics, and create a Grafana dashboard, show build times, queue lengths, and agent usage. Let's look at the 14th question, which is what is the Jenkins Build Pipeline plugin? Before pipelines as code popular, the Build Pipeline plugin was used to visualize job dependencies and execution flow. It shows how one job outputs triggers another, creating a chain of jobs. Why is it helpful? Because it provides a graphical overview of multi-job workflows. Imagine a production line where you can see how raw materials move from station to station. The Build Pipeline plugin is like a window into that line. For example, job A compiles code, job B runs test, deploys to staging. The plugin shows this as the flow diagram. 41st question is, can Jenkins be integrated with Docker? Yes, the answer to this is Jenkins integrates seamlessly with Docker, and this is one of the most common modern use cases. Jenkins can build Docker images, push them to registries, and even run jobs inside Docker containers. This helps create consistent, reproducible environments, reducing the "it works on my machine" problem. The ways Jenkins use Docker, it builds Docker images from application code, runs Jenkins itself inside a Docker container for easy setup, use Docker agents so each build runs on its own isolated container. Now, example of this Jenkins file snippet, here we have the pipeline agent, any stages, stage, build Docker image, and these are the steps: sh docker build, my app, Docker push, my repo, my app. The 42nd question is, explain the difference between continuous integration and continuous testing. To answer this, let's look at the differences. The first aspect is purpose. Continuous integration, it focuses on integrating code frequently to detect issues early. Continuous testing, it ensures continuous testing throughout the pipeline to catch defects early and often. Scope primarily focuses on building and integrating code in the case of continuous integration. Continuous testing, it includes various types of tests such as unit, integration, performance, and security tests. Automation level for continuous integration is, it automates the build process and runs unit test. Continuous testing automates a wider range of tests including UI, performance, and security tests. Testing focuses continuous integration. It tests mainly focus on the correctness of the integration itself, whereas continuous testing, it tests aim to ensure overall quality, including performance, security, and user experience. The 43rd question is, how is Jenkins used in DevOps? Now, it integrates with almost every tool in the DevOps toolchain and automates repetitive tasks so teams can deliver software faster and more reliably. Let's look at the role in DevOps. The first one is automate CI/CD pipelines. It connects source control, builds tools, test network, deployment tools, and monitoring system. Ensures faster feedback loops, reducing the time between coding and deployment. So our 44th question is, how can you customize Jenkins UI? To answer this, you need to say that Jenkins provides a traditional web UI, but it can be customized to make navigation and visualization easier to teams. Ways to customize: first is install and CSS plugins to change the look and feel. Use Blue Ocean for a modern graphical pipeline view. Organize jobs into folders and views for better structure. Customizing Jenkins UI is like redecorating your office space. It doesn't change the work being done, but it makes it easier and more pleasant to navigate. 45th question is, what are the best practices for Jenkins pipeline creation? Now, creating pipelines effectively is crucial for reliability and maintainability. Best practices help ensure pipelines are clean, efficient, and secure. The key best practices are: use declarative pipelines for readability and consistency. Keep your Jenkins file in version control Git alongside code. Break pipelines into modular stages and steps. Use shared libraries for reusable logic across the projects. Run independent jobs in parallel to save time. Secure secrets using the Jenkins credential store. Handle errors gracefully using post-action. So instead of writing 10 Jenkins files that all contain the same Docker build logic, store that logic in a shared library function and import it into each pipeline. This way, if Docker build logic changes, you update it in one place. That's it, guys. I hope by now you shouldn't just know what Jenkins does, but also why it's such a powerful tool in modern DevOps pipelines. So whether you're a fresher trying to land your first role or an intermediate developer sharpening your CI/CD skills, this guide gives you the confidence to answer clearly, explain deeply, and stand out in interviews. So go ahead, practice these answers, sprinkle in your own project experiences, and you won't just impress interviewers, you will own conversation. And with that, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos like this. Thank you and keep learning with Simplilearn. Hi there, if you like this video, subscribe to Simplilearn YouTube channel and click here to watch similar videos. To nerd up and get certified, you can check the description box below.